Hello and welcome to our first episode of Six Nations Weekly 2025 as we look back on an opening round filled with thrills, spills, and a little bit of everything. With me to reflect on Ireland's perfect start, a purest watch for the 20s, France doing what France do, and Scotland getting off to a perfect start, are an all-star panel of guests. We have Daniel Humphreys of the Red Hand fame, Harley Worthy of the Rap podcast fame, and David Gordial of fame of these lands and harping on rugby as well. Fellas, you're all very welcome on. Harley, I'll start with yourself as our distinguished guest, as I said to Ed the other day. It's great to have the Six Nations back, but not the ideal start for yourself as a Welshman.
As a Welshman, no. As a fan of rugby, that France game was fantastic to watch, even if it was more like an unopposed training run at times. But yeah, I mean, it's international rugby. It's good quality test rugby that has every game has some form of meaning. I'll go into my opinions on what everyone playing Wales has to actually play for because the wind's almost sewn up at this rate.
No, they are that way, and we will. I would ask the lads their thoughts on Ireland, but we're going to get straight into it because we've got so much to cover. We will start, as always, as we will for every show. If you are new, we will start with Ireland. We'll finish with Ireland with the seniors in the 20s. Simon Easterby's debut as interim head coach of the national side ended in a try bonus point 27 to 22 victory over England. Ireland scoring 22 unanswered points in that second half. Daniel, I'll let you get the ball rolling. Ireland extend their winning run in home Six Nations games and I have in some fashion written here, in fashion. It was certainly a tale of two halves, though.
Definitely. Yep. At the time it was really frustrating first half, but in lots of ways, I think some of the lads were touching on it beforehand was it just felt like England's sort of game plan was really good in the first half. They were going to slow up our ball and they were going to bring the game to sort of just a basic power game, and they kicked it a lot. And I felt like there was times in the first half where you're like, it was a half moment away from we were going to unlock them here, and I think Crowley obviously had a very big role in that second half where when he came on, but I think as you pointed out, our bench, it was the difference, wasn't it? It was Dan Shane was incredibly good. I think it can't be said enough how good that guy is. And it was class to have him back, but no, it was good. It's the second half. It was the three tries were three very individual moments, and James Lowe, outstanding again. Like it's just, but I think if you were an England fan, you'd be really disappointed with some of the way that we scored. Like I think Alex Mitchell falling off that tackle, it's really poor from him, and but. Yeah, no, it was good from Ireland. I mean, there was obviously lots to talk, like lots to improve, and actually, at the end, England getting those two scores, probably the scoreline was a bit closer than it maybe it should have been, but England deserved to be really in that game. And I think England will be really disappointed that they let us get away. Like we were there for the taking at times, and uh, I think obviously as an Ireland fan, it's great result, and um, a couple of fantastic tries, but yeah, that was it's a good day. It's a good day.
I mean, there is just an element of any time you beat England at home in the Six Nations, it's a good day. I know Hugh Griffin said to me at the weekend, like Wales literally have a song about it. And Harley, I'll come to you because I know, like the whole point of having the likes of yourself on these shows in every single show for the Six Nations is to get an outside perspective. And like we spoke before the game, on this channel about how important England's defense would be. And I think to their credit, they were very stingy, but it took four pretty stunning individual tries. Like one of them is a brilliant set plays move. The Bundyaki one is like what's that, a 1%er, 2%er? He'd no right to score. There was three men hanging off him. Like credit should go to England for their defense. Yes, they faded out in this game, but like that could very easily be an Irish performance where they only scored two tries and never get going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a big part of it is if going back a long time ago, back when Wales in 2019, there were plenty of games where people said they shouldn't have won, and it was moments of individual brilliance like that, which just led them to get that extra 2 or 3%. So 50-50s become 60-40, 60-40s go up to 70% chances. So when you're playing a team playing with confidence, you do make it work. I think to an extent, I think England went right with how they attacked Ireland. That was a very specific. They tried to address 2 points. One, how do you stop Ireland, slow their set piece, slow their ruck speed down, get them so that they're then having to run against the set line, and then you've got a bit more chance because they don't really have heavy power carriers, so they use guile and speed to get around that. And second, then England worry a lot about falling off at the end of games, so they packed their bench full of big power players like Tom Willis and Chandler Cunningham South. I think then that then detracted from what they were doing to stop Ireland in attack, which allowed Ireland in towards the end. But then it still gave them the power they wanted to. One thing I was surprised at is they didn't target Ireland's line out as much as I thought they might have.
Very little contest, wasn't there?
Yeah, with a player like Maro Itoje, who I think is only second to Ty Burn in winning opposition ball, it's quite, it was quite surprising they didn't try to use that as a weapon, especially with Kelleher sometimes having issues with his darts and Sheehan just coming back. That seemed like a prime opportunity to rattle Ireland right at the source.
Yeah, definitely. And I that's the thing. Like, I know a lot of credit will go out this week about Baird came back in, Kelleher fixed his throwing, so it's all good. But I do think there's an element of a lot of people would have expected England to get up at two a lot more often. And to be fair, like even the one lineup they did steal, Itoje gets pinned for it. Like, it's a harsh one, but to be fair, Ben O'Keefe did tell him before, if I see you making contact like that in the air, I know what you're doing. I'm going to penalise you, and he did. And obviously, that's the penalty that took Ireland in front at that point in the game. I think it went to what 13-10 at that point. And David, like, we could talk about set piece being massive, scrum probably not as much as a factor. That's the way the modern game is going. But the benches was always going to be the thing, and we said it before on the preview show that Ireland have to deploy their bench smarter than they did in the autumn. They can't be bringing lads in for 15 minutes and expecting them to rip up trees. Instead, Conan got half an hour, Sheehan got half an hour, Crowley, Henshaw, Henderson all got 20 minutes. They all got plenty of time. And those lads in particular, they were deployed earlier than the anthem we've really seen from Farrell, and it worked. It was the changing of the game in that kind of late third quarter.
Yeah, and in particular, like with the likes of, say, Henshaw coming on, he came on 57 minutes for Bundy Aki, who was having a great game, who had just scored a really wonderful try in the corner. To take off someone like him and be able to replace him with Robbie Henshaw it shows the depth that Ireland have in those positions, but it also shows the faith they have that those players come off the bench will be able to make an impact. As you said, Sheehan and Conan came on around 49 minutes. Ireland were down 5-10 at that stage. Henshaw comes on 57 minutes. Clarkson, Crowley come on at 58. Henderson 61, and that pack of lads, like Henderson, a lot has been made of his customary errors off the bench. There was none of that this time. Conan came on, and he's just this force of nature every time he comes off the bench. So much so, I've seen people making arguments over the last week that he deserves to start now next week. And reasonably, you could start him at 6, and Ireland certainly wouldn't suffer for it. But I think there's a strong argument to be made that you need good players on the bench. This is something South Africa have been doing for years, and they just won 2 World Cups in a row. Like, the idea of, I know we kind of balked at it as being a bit naff to call them finishers, but if you have players who can come off the bench at 30 minutes and make a huge impact and know that they only have to do it for 30 minutes, you can really empty your tank if you know that's all you have to do. As I said, Conan was immense. Henshaw comes on for Aki. That's just a testament to the kind of laughable riches that Ireland have at centre, that they can replace one of those guys with the other one. Even probably, as you said, not as big a deal in the scrum this time, but Thomas Clarkson, this is only his 3rd cap. He came off the bench for Finney Bealham, probably slightly earlier than intended. Bealham seemed to go down with an injury. Hopefully there's nothing too serious there. But he held his own in the scrum while being quite enough around the park. But Dan Sheehan, just to mention a guy who, this is his only 2nd game back now after an ACL injury. He came back for Leinster, was immense there, and he's carried that form through here. Just a note on his try in the 71st minute. It was a wonderful finish, and you could see the emphatic nature he slammed the ball down to the ground with. But he was part of the setup as well. It was a Jack Conan break up the middle of the field to create the space at the start. But
He touches it 3 times in 2 phases.
Yeah, it's Dan Sheehan himself who sends the 25-meter pass wide to Lowe to run up the wing, and Lowe obviously runs strong up the wing, bursts through, and then it's Sheehan running the support line on the inside to get it back. having those guys to come off the bench, I wrote down about Kelleher, or sorry, I talked about Henshaw and Aki being laughable riches. In a position like hooker where you don't expect someone to go 80 minutes ideally, having Kelleher and Sheehan to play off each other is the ideal scenario for Ireland. Reasonably, you could start Sheehan next week and Kelleher off the bench, but you could really go either way, and the two of them would play off each other very well. And then, can't of course forget Jack Crowley, who came on with 58 minutes. Was it 58 minutes he came on? That's certainly a thing in the Johnny Sexton years that would never have happened in a game this tight, to bring on someone that early. It's something we saw last season when Crowley himself was starting. There was a willingness to bring the likes of Kieran Frawley off the bench. And it seems it's good to see the Easterby's carrying that on, that they are willing to make a change at 10. And then you have a player who's as good as Jack Curley coming off the bench with a point to prove, with some fire in his belly, wanting to make a mark, and he did. He carried aggressively to the line. He continued to boss Ireland's game. He took his conversions very well. And it'll be a coin toss next week. He could start against Scotland with Prendergast coming off the bench. Equally, Prendergast could start with him coming off the bench, and I don't think Ireland would suffer either way. And in a position like that, that's what you want, because there was a day when, if Johnny Sexton went down injured, that was Ireland done. That's not the case anymore. We could trust Jack Harley to start and play 80 minutes. You could trust Sam Prendergast to start and play 80 minutes. But if you can have one of them come on, play 50, 60 great minutes, and the other finish it out for 25 or 30, that's going to put Ireland in an even stronger position, by having a bench that can so easily not only match but even elevate the performances of the players they're replacing. So from an Ireland point of view, that's just that is the ideal position to be in. And the only two people who came on with 10 minutes to go were Cian Healy and Conor Murray, stalwart players for Ireland. And I think the fact that they were deployed as late as they were, I think Healy came on at 73 minutes, Murray came on at 74, is really just a testament to the players they were replacing in Andrew Porter and Jefferson Gibson Park. But yeah, that strength on the bench, that's going to be a real strength for Ireland if they can continue to deploy that kind of power late in the game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, I'm not going to talk out both sides of my mouth here. I wanted Ireland to use the bench earlier. They did, and they had that impact. I would probably look at it and say, well, next week, do I give Sheehan from the off, or do I stick with Kelleher? I probably stick with Kelleher, because I look at, we could be down a tight head. McCarthy's likely to be ruled out. Having Sheehan in particular in a pack where the replacements bench of that pack is not exactly the most physical, when you look at Healy for his few minutes, Henderson, if you'd imagine he'll still be in there, but we'll wait and see on that one. Conan, it's not the biggest pack. I know Scotland aren't the biggest pack either, but they are likely to go 6-2. I would probably keep Sheehan myself on the bench, give him that half an hour roll again. And like, he is just that, like, sometimes you just have to talk about sport in the bare bones. Like, he is the best hooker in the world. Like, I don't think anyone here is going to disagree with that. He's just world class. And you do wonder if they will just race into a decision like, well, he's back. We have to play him. There is that kind of shiny toy element of someone like Josh Sheehan. Even with Jack Conan as well. I know, David, you probably disagree with me on this. I would probably have started him at 6 the last day. Well, I know I named his a chew group, but that was a pipe dream in some ways. I don't think he was ever going to start, but I'd have probably gone with Conan. But again, the same thing. It's like, he played so well off the bench. Will they be quick to make that move? History says no. They probably won't. They'll probably stick with the tried and trusted, and that's one thing about it. And Daniel, I do want to bring you in here, because it is Scotland next. It's over Murrayfield. Both teams probably have a slight advantage, but not over each other, but they have a slight advantage that's an 8-day turnaround. So just that extra day to get a bit of rest. There is injuries in the tight head side of the scrum, as I mentioned. Furlong, McCarthy likely to be ruled out, and Finney Bealham is a major concern after that injury. But despite everything that Ireland have to improve upon, and there is loads there, they're very well placed heading into Murrayfield.
Very well placed. 100%. I think Scotland will. I think if Scotland know or will watch that game and think, why didn't England go after Ireland's line out more, and what, and is there something to be got out of the scrum? Just it felt like we got given the ball when we were under pressure, and I thought that was a really weird decision. I couldn't really understand that. It was like, what if, as you pointed out, obviously Itoje gives away the penalty, that line out, but England didn't even get up, and like Ireland, I think Scotland will come with a different approach. because they've got Rory Darge and they've got people who can get over the ball anyway, so they won't need to, find a way to put more pressure on our sort of ruck ball. But you have to think like it seems like a silly thing to give Ireland the ball and then try and take it off them. It's like stop the. If I was Scotland, I'd be thinking let's stop it at source. Let's put loads of pressure on their line out. The Ronan Gallagher shouldn't get that many just free ball into with no one contesting it. He should never get that because Ireland's line has been an issue. And yesterday, because as you're pointing out, it's all fine and dandy because we didn't have any pressure on us yesterday, and the line it looked great. But I think Scotland will at home, obviously, as well, a different team, but I think Scotland will have to put a bit more pressure on us at set pieces. And equally, I also thought that yesterday, I thought that game was there for Italy to win in Murrayfield. I didn't think Scotland were all together that brilliant. I didn't think it was, a vintage Scotland performance. I think they missed Tuipulotu. I think he's a massive player for them. So I think Ireland, as you say, there'll be a sort of thinking of well, Dan Sheehan's the best hooker in the world. Yeah, let's get him on from the start. But South Africa have taken this. They had Malcolm Marx for the last 5 years, and Malcolm Marx, I think, has been aside from Sheehan the best hooker, but he's on the bench every week for them. I think, as you pointed out, like Dan Sheehan's role was so elevated because he was able to break open the game. Just even that, as we pointed out, that try with 3 touches and 2 phases that are just elite level stuff, but you just probably don't get that in the first 10 minutes. You just don't get the gaps don't appear, the guys aren't tired. So I think it'll be interesting to see, obviously, with Ireland's selection policy what you do. But I wasn't overly watching the Scotland game. I just wasn't overly worried about maybe the impact of people like Russell, etc. Because I just felt like they were slightly off it. And actually, if Italy had maybe a bit more about them, they'd maybe gone into Murrayfield really thinking they should win. And I thought before the game, I thought Italy were, I thought it was a bit ridiculous how sort of the bookmakers and stuff had them at plus 18 or plus 20. I feel like Murrayfield's not an easy place to go, but there's definitely more there for teams when they don't have people like Tuipulotu. I think there's definitely Ireland should be expecting to go to Murrayfield and get a result. So I think it's an interesting week, obviously, with the selections, but I feel like we've got plenty there. I think, as you say, with the bench as well, there should be plenty to overcome Scotland.
Yeah, there should be, and I think all eyes now are, but they're on that game. But there's also the element of France, and we'll get on to France in 2 minutes. David, I'm going to ask you a pretty strong, heavy loaded question for 12 on a Sunday afternoon, where we're all still a bit tired from last night. But you look at where Ireland are at now, and there's shades of last year. Now, the performance in Marseille in round one last year was 5 times better than what we've seen yesterday. Like, that was one of the most perfect performances we've seen under this coaching ticket. But Ireland are after having a convincing win over a title rival. Is it too much to say that from here they should be looking at Grand Slam? And I'm not getting ahead of ourselves. I'm just judging this team on the standards they set themselves, where they have never lost to Scotland. This particular team has never lost to Scotland. This particular team wins 99% of all their home matches, and they France at home. Like, is it too much to say that it's kind of Grand Slam from here? And yes, the history of a third consecutive championship.
I mean, not sure if you asked anyone in the Ireland camp that they'd tell you they'd throw something at your head. But
There's a reason why I'm saying it to you over Zoom call.
realistically, yes. Statistically, yes. They should be beating Scotland in Murrayfield. They should be beating Italy in Rome. Very jealous of anyone who's gotten tickets to go over that. They should be beating this Welsh team in Cardiff. The years when Ireland have England and France at home are usually the years where they target the championship because home advantage is such a strength, because those are the two teams that are most likely to trip you up on your way through. They've now made it past England. Yeah, all else being equal, the path forward should be there. The obvious issue is that the path forward does go through France, and this is a French team that now has Antoine Dupont back. His influence can never be understated. It's a France team that that themselves got off to a pretty strong start against, granted, a weaker Welsh team, but nevertheless. So I think it will be the target. It has to be the goal at this stage. Whether or not it's an expectation, I don't know. This France team is good enough that they deserve all due respect. By the time we get there, and I would be wary, particularly off last year. Still don't know exactly why it happened, but it did seem like Ireland dipped off as the tournament went on. You know, as you said, they had a spectacular start against France and Marseille, probably one of the most complete performances they've put together. And for their first Six Nations game after losing Sexton as captain and as out half, you know, it was stunning. It just looked like they hadn't missed a beat. If anything, they'd gone up a couple of pegs. Strong performances over Wales and Italy, and then it just seemed like England caught them on the hop, punished them for it. And then Scotland, I mean, we won the championship in the end, but that Scotland game was painful to watch, immensely stressful, and that was at home. So, yes, the Grand Slam should be the goal from here. This should have been one of two big road bumps, and we've now crossed it. So, the odds should be improved post this weekend and post the fact that this wasn't a perfect performance, and yet they still managed to, like, if you told me at halftime 5-10 down this was going to be a try bonus point win, you know, that it didn't seem even remotely possible at that stage. So I would say that has to be the goal, but the second of the massive road bumps is France. And I think it would be foolish to take them for granted. And I don't think this Ireland team will take it for granted. And even going to somewhere like Murrayfield, you know, or indeed, you know, we've been saying Italy are looking better this year. You know, it'd be the height of hilarity if they managed to beat England, Scotland, Wales, and France, and then fell in Rome. It'd almost be worth seeing it happen. But I think if they can win that France game, it's Grand Slam. Unfortunately, it does look like it'll be Grand Slam or nothing, because if France beat them that day, then France will almost certainly win the championship. I can't see anyone else tripping them up, and Ireland will have to be happy with a triple crown. But from here, yes, that has to be the goal.
And I think to kind of look ahead to next week, I know we've 3 more games to look at, but it kind of sets up next week so fascinating, to use the word I used in the preview. Like, you have Ireland going to Scotland. We're talking about Grand Slam. We're talking about Scotland. Can they show that they're title contenders by knocking off a big team? France go to England. They'll be overwhelming favourites even without Entamac. But England, like, their record at home to France is pretty good. Like, they haven't lost 2 in a row in a long time at home to France. Wales Italy will be really interesting, because Italy will go in as favourites, not something they're used to in the Six Nations. But we're going to talk about Wales. We're going to talk about France next, because on Paris, on the opening night, like, we'll talk about pageantry and all that in a second. But, like, in terms of a game, Dupont did Dupont shit. Audrey did Audrey shit. Wales were kind of shit, to be fair. But Harley, I'll start with yourself. Like, and with the hosts as well, who were simply brilliant. And, like, again, to use that, like, from pre-game to post-game, it's every game should be in Stade de France at 8 o'clock. I think it's the only solution to the atmosphere talk. But having watched them, maybe through your fingers at times, are they the early title favourites for that performance?
I think they were early title favourites beforehand. You know, a lot of the talk has been, particularly coming out of France, is that, you know, this is Gautier's, you know, it's do or die. It's a Six Nations title or out the door. And you're looking at the form the likes of Toulouse and Bordeaux are in, and just the way they played against that, albeit against, I mean, you said kind of shit. I'd say 7 shades of shit, but you know, that you could still see an awful lot in there that would cause trouble for the other 4 nations as well. I mean, you know, with Ireland and England probably the only 2 who could physically match up to France that way. Scotland could probably out pretty rugby them, but you know, it's just excellent. You know, they batter you up front with these heavy carriers like Aldrit and Miafu, and even Antonio. All right, he's got the top speed of a small house, but he's also got the mass of a small house, so that still hurts when you try to tackle it. And then you just get sucked in trying, and then Dupont will go, "Oh, winger, right. Oh, you're going to defend the crossfield kick, right, into the 13. Oh, you're defending the 13, right, crossfield kick." And just for fun, I'll do it off my wrong foot as well, just because I can. And, you know, that level of bullshit just doesn't happen. Untamak, I mean, people were saying, oh, it's all Dupont. But what you need to look is when you watch it, you can see Unterbach as the one who organizes everything, and he just provides the framework to allow Dupont to do his magical things. Louis Bielbieri is just scoring tries for fun. Sogbo, the guy they've plucked up from the Pro de just absolutely unbelievably good. I mean, it's just great to. I mean, yes, I'm getting to the point of I've just stopped caring how Wales do now, but it's still a joy to watch that France team in full motion because they just can beat you so many ways. It's just absolutely pure. That's what I'd call purest rugby.
Yeah, no, it kind of was, and it's like sometimes you do just have to enjoy it. And I know Squidge is one of the people who really push this. Like sometimes you just have to stand back and enjoy like what's happening. And French rugby is kind of that at the moment. But we do have to talk about Wales. And like I think the worst thing you can say about Wales right now is they look like they lack direction and identity. Like they had last year felt like, okay, we're going young. Now they've gone older. They lost every game last year, like which is just never like never on the cards, never should be for a country like Wales. But this game in particular, if you took Jack Morgan out of that game, you'd struggle on a player rating to give anyone more than a 5. And I think yes, they were outmatched and they're just not as good as the French. That's fair, but like a one man band won't win you many games in the Six Nations these days.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely sort of case. I mean, I wouldn't say that no other players did that. I think there were some excellent. Dav Jenkins had an excellent rearguard shift and 24, 25 tackles. Ben Thomas, I think, got stuck in a rock and hard place. So been training at 10 all week, and then within a few minutes having to push into 12. And then that, and he's still the one who's ending up having to get given shit ball behind the game line, getting caught. But the problem is you just look at some of these set plays and you're just like, so particularly the Nick Tompkins ones late in the second half when he gets held up over the line, you can tell that's a set play that's been designed for a bigger, heavier back carrier, your Max Llewellyn, Jamaicans, Grady's. But they decided not to pick Max Llewellyn, but they're still running the same play with a player it doesn't work. And you're just like, well, what was the point? And this is the problem all the Welsh fans have been having at the moment is they don't get the pointing in these decisions Gatland's making because he completely changes his mind the next campaign. And you were just looking at it. I mean, there were some tactics that were working. And when you look at the stats, we weren't actually that far off, apart from the key ones. France got into our 22 12 times. We got in 5. We scored nothing. They scored 7 tries. Those sorts of things. We went in there initially with a kicking game, kick to compete, and our back three were getting something else. But the problem is they'd win the ball and then there was no one there to receive the ball or to clear the ruck out, so we got turned over or they knocked on. And there were lots of things like that. So I mentioned Ben Thomas before. He was finding lots of space in that backfield and kicking. But then there was no one chasing. There was no one there going, right, let's all flood through. When you compare that to how the likes of France, Ireland, Scotland, even England, when a player makes a break, there's usually a couple of people there to support them. But for Wales, it's all individual stuff. And I think it all comes down to it's a coaching team that don't want to coach because that seems to be the only way. They brought in an attacking coach who was trying to do something different, and they've got rid of him. They've gone back to Rob Howley, an attacking coach who the last time Gatland was in charge, everyone was saying, well, this attack is just based on endless pick and goes, kicking, and hope that someone does something magical. And rugby's moved on from that quite a way. And Wales are just getting stuck further and further behind.
And that's the thing. And like, you never want to call out an individual coach. I know there's plenty of people in Ireland who'd love to call out Warren Gatland, but we won't. But you do look at it, and it just feels very like I'm not gonna say 2013 Wales because that was a very, very good team, but kind of mid 2010s Wales, but without the talent, without the experience, and like I would go to bat and say like Jack Morgan, I think he showed at the weekend why he should be on the Lions tour. I think he was absolutely stellar in that game, but this isn't the same level of Wales team, and sometimes you do have to look at him like, well, are they trying to be more conservative and defend first? Because you're going to lose a lot of collisions. It's not the biggest Welsh pack he selected. Obviously, Wainwright's injury was a big issue there because like they're all the way down Faletau. Wainwright goes off injured. Um, like, do you go kick heavy? do you just try and run and just play? Like they clearly don't want to do that by the looks of the coaching schemes, as you said. There seems to be no desire to do that. The back three selection, the backline selection puzzled me at the time. Like I watched Nick Tompkins and Liam Williams play against Munster, and Nick Tompkins didn't look like an international centre in a game where he was the only one who's test capped. Do you know? And like, yeah, that's the thing. And like, some of it is confidence when they put on a Wales jersey. The opposite to what it used to be. But still, it's not a great place to be. And you do hope. Like I enjoyed the snippets from what we've seen from Adam Jones this week, and we said it before we came on air. I would like to see that level of enthusiasm stick with them for a while, whether it's him or whoever. But I don't think the direction they're going at the moment is one of progress, unfortunately. And I think that's, considering the low bar when they came in, is not a great sign. David, we'll finish the conversation on France, and look, we're going to talk an awful lot about France over the next 6 weeks. I know that, and we're going to talk an awful lot about this man as well, Antoine Dupont. Like, a word for him, because he only played what, 50 minutes. He was involved in everything. He had 3 assists. A lot of people who had him in their fancy team wish he ran in that one where he gave the pass to the second pass to the winger Theo. But look, has there ever been anyone better than Antoine Dupont? Like, can we say that now without sounding like bold prediction types?
Yeah, I mean he had as many try assists as James Lowe, so he'd be happy to be keeping that kind of company. No, he was brilliant. He always brilliant. And it's a testament to France that they can take him off 50 minutes and say that's enough from you, and someone like Nolan Legorek can come on. It's one of the funniest things about France is that scrum half might be one of their strongest depth positions, and it just never comes up because of how good he is. You have Baptiste Seron, Maxime Lucu, Legorek. Like they have a lot of he could disappear, and he did disappear last year, and they could still do just fine in his absence. But no, he's unbelievable. The way he plays, he almost plays like a mix of a 9 and a 10 while he's out there. I know he has played 10 a couple of times for Toulouse. I still think 9 is probably his best position because it just affords him that extra kind of scope to have the kind of influence he wants on the game. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of talk last season when he went off to join the Sevens. You know, I think he went and he achieved his goal, so you can't really knock him when he goes away and does that, and then comes back seemingly in immaculate form. Toulouse have been, do, doing quite well in the top 14. Obviously done exceptionally well in the Champions Cup so far as well. And there was a little bit of moaning on his part about having to go down to South Africa, but that's no bad thing. Um, but no, he's just at test level. His form is just phenomenal, and it's the thing, as I was saying earlier about France being a massive speed bump, that would make you nervous as an Irish fan. Is that this year, yes, we have them at home, but they have him back, and that could be the difference. He is the kind of player who single-handedly can turn things, and he does it in every kind of way. It's not just like, obviously the attacking nous is there between the passes and the crossfield kicks off both feet because he's ambidextrous. He would be a GA manager's fucking dream with his ambidextrous feet. But his defense as well. Like he's not a tall. I met him. I've seen him in real life. He's not a tall person. He doesn't look big, but the strength that he packs into his size, Mac Hansen could tell you all about that. And Mac Hansen's well over 6 foot, so he really does seem to just be the complete rugby player. Whether or not that's always going to be enough for that French team, who I think in their own heart of hearts will feel they've performed in the last number of years. They only have the one Six Nations, I think, in the last 5 years. Looking back even over the last 10 to 15, they have, compared to how good France now seem to be, have underperformed and underdelivered at that level while performing quite well at club level. So I think for people like him and Ntamak, still quite young, still got a lot of years, they'll want to start racking up some silverware at test level, because it is only befitting people who are as good at the game as they are, and in particular how good he is.
No, we could probably do 5 minutes every episode on Antoine Dupont, but like we also have Champions Cup to talk about towards the end of the year as well. We'll probably talk about it then. But just before we move on, we have 2 more games to cover. But before we move on, if you like what you see or hear, please do subscribe. You can find all the links down below. But also, if you can leave a review, subscribe, it makes all the difference. as with Harley's inclusion and Ed's the last day, we will have guests from across the competing Six Nations, across from the four Irish provinces, and we'll cover all 15 of the senior games and the 5 under 20 games, one of which we're going to get onto in just a minute. But first to Murrayfield, as Scotland pulled clear in the end to defeat the Azzurri 31-19. We mentioned before we hit record that it just felt like for a minute that Italy might do something, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. Daniel, in terms of result, try bonus point second in the table, an ideal start for Scotland, but a pretty scrappy performance in patches and not their best stuff.
Not at all. Not at all. As I sort of just said there, it felt like Scotland had really clicked something in the backline when with Tuipulotu over the last 2 years, and I just think he's a bigger miss for them than I like. I know it was talked about a lot, but it looked even tougher for Scotland to sort of get maybe that's sort of just first phase actually get into a sort of um play that they have with Tuipulotu. It sort of looks like Scotland from 4 or 5 years ago. It's like there's the opportunity that Hugh Jones runs in a brilliant try, but they don't look like the sort of like a test match animal. It looks like something that it's it's good for like YouTube and it's good for like a TikTok or something. But it's like, is it something that really, like, you as a Scotland fan, you'd hang your hat on that game plan working lots of times? And again, I don't see it. Like, I think they have this soft underbelly, and it felt like Italy, like they were right. Italy were right there when Brex runs that in under the posts. I think a different team with a belief, a true belief they should win. Because I think we all say that Italy have improved a lot, but I just think that still with Italy, the mindset of actually finishing off a game away, as you point out, away from home, how difficult it is in the championship. It's like Italy got into a position to win and started to panic. It was like, oh, like, should we be here? And so I think, like, actually then if you then take Scotland, I mean, Duan van der Merwe was pretty much in like the third row for that second try. I don't know why they didn't come back for that. So like, even moments like that, I was sitting there going, you know, like, some of the tries Scotland scored are just like they wouldn't get that against a lot of other teams. Really, they wouldn't. They wouldn't get. Dylan Vandenberg wouldn't get that kind of space. He also wouldn't be allowed to run off the pitch in other games. So, but yeah, I wasn't overly impressed with Scotland, and I did think that I'm keep coming back to it, but I just think the Tuipulotu thing is a massive miss for them, and I'm not sure how much you could catch them on their day. There's a day when Scotland could just torch you, and that could happen. But if you avoid that, I don't see a lot in the Scotland side that is like, because every year is Scotland's year, obviously. Especially if you read any UK media. Um, but I wasn't overly impressed, and like kind of it cemented a lot of the things you'd be worried about as a Scotland fan, I would say. Maybe a lack of sort of dynamism up front, something to really like they can't really get after teams, I think, up front. And I think, like, for example, I think France would give Scotland a horrible time. I honestly think I'm really giving them a tough time, but I just don't really see it with Scotland. And I think all the chat about how their backline will form the Lions backline. Just again, it was like Blair Kinghorn's a very good player, but there's a lot of other bits where you're just like, I'm not sold on lots of it. And so yeah, I think for them in the championship, they will have they will say the first two home games they'll expect to win. But I think Ireland should really go there and take them to task. So again, not sold on Scotland, as you can probably tell.
No, I think it's fair. And it's not like when you play bad against Italy, so you can't win. It's more of a case of, well, the performance wasn't great. They raced into an earlier lead. We thought they were going to win by 40 points. Then came the errors. Then Italy clawed their way back into it. And there is an element of just belief. Like, did Italy believes they could kick on? Italy had a bench that was primed to be there in the fight. And, like, there is an element with Scotland that, like, you look at Finn, right? Finn, for me, he's Lions starting 10. I still believe that until someone takes the jersey off him. He wasn't great, just. Tuipulotu wasn't there. I expected Stafford McDowell to have a great game. He wasn't hectic. Granted, Hugh Jones was brilliant, so you're always going to look at maybe a step down. Anyways, Duhan, Kinghorn haven't been brilliant for Scotland for maybe a year now, and there is an element that if we can talk about Ireland looked like a team who were potentially sleepwalking into something, you could say the same for Scotland. Because since the World Cup, or basically since during the World Cup, it has felt like they've just taken one step down on every marker that they've looked to hit. The Australia game being that exception. Harley, this was a game, like, because we have to talk about Italy, this was a game where, as we said, they probably lacked that killer instinct, but it still feels like they are a force to be reckoned with, and I don't want to demean them by saying, oh, they'll give everyone a good game, but they've got France at home, a fixture they typically get up for. They've got Wales at home next week, a fixture they'll be heavy favourites for. It does feel like they'll remain competitive, whereas the fear coming in was they mightn't be as competitive as they were last year.
I mean, I think the big misconception a lot of people have had with Italy, particularly when they had that big losing run, is there's been stages to Italy. So when they first came in, it was completely brand new. No one knew what to expect, so they were getting surprise results. Then people got the hang of them and started absolutely battering them, as their level of that professional development wasn't going because weren't doing any sort of elite league. Then they started going into the Pro 14, etc., going through, and then they got a little bit better. So they were getting closer against people's second teams. So people started to put up the first team. So then it looked like they were getting battered again. And again, they started to build up a bit, but they were still losing, but they were getting closer and closer and closer. Now we're at a point now where you can't afford to put your second team out against Italy, really. You can, I mean, France and England, Ireland probably can, but certainly not Scotland and Wales. And they've got some, a lot of the things that people have criticised them for the past, not having enough star players. Well, Menoncello is absolutely fantastic. The Garbicis, Michele Lamar is a fantastic leader, Canelli brothers. And they've got some really physical carriers who get in. Negri is just absolute animal for him. I think when he eventually retires, there's gonna be some issues to fill his shoes. But again, there's still always going to be that mental block, and you see it with a lot of teams that if they're not winning regularly, they just don't know how to win. And Wales are getting into that sort of spiral now. I think they've probably got the perfect set of home games for them. So I think having Wales at home next round, that's going to be enough to get that monkey off the back. France, they should have beaten last year, and then you never know with England. I can't remember if that's Twickenham or Impact.
Twickenham this time.
Twickenham, never mind then. That one's out the window. I'd back England to beat Italy in Twickenham every time. But yeah, you can see this and things. I mean, I do think there are some issues around Garbisi's game management quite a lot. I do think that's improved with Tommaso Allen playing at 15, but I think then you take away in the back three. But I mean, Garbisi's still prone to doing that early Finn thing of, let's do the miracle pass when actually maybe another phase up the middle is what you need to unlock that defense. Yeah. But I mean, they're there or thereabouts. We were a bit worried with how Italy were going to perform given how, frankly, crap Benetton had been this season. But it's looking like Quesada's managing to pull enough out of the players who aren't from Benetton and from the Benetton players themselves to get over to give this a really good performance. But yeah, I mean, one thing we criticise Scotland for a lot of things, but one thing they do very well is defend. Steve Dunley's defence is one of their highest tackle completions, and they're very good at getting over the breakdown. Lots of those players, without being obvious jackal threats, can get in and rip the ball out. So I think Italy were a bit unlucky. I do imagine they'll beat Wales next week, and probably quite comfortably.
Yeah, that's the thing. But there is an added pressure that they wouldn't have in other games. It's probably the one thing that would hold you back if you were on the fence on that one. We are going to finish up proceedings now by looking at the Thursday night lights in Cork, where a Michael Foy inspired Ireland tried and fought, but were ultimately kind of just overpowered by world champions England, who were really, really good. David, I'll start things off with yourself. Like, this was a game, it was framed about Henry Pollock, Junior Kapoku, rather unfortunately, because this game didn't last too long. But the one thing that we expected that turned out to be true was it was a real forward battle, and that's something Ireland couldn't afford to get into with this England team.
Yeah, it was really a case of just of power winning out. The night itself was Yeah, I mean it was typical weather for the part of the world for this time of year. You know, it wasn't great. It wasn't going to produce a lot of fast running rugby. It was going to favour the team that could arm wrestle the other one into submission. And on the night in question, that was England. You know, yeah. It worth noting. I know he went off early. But Junior Kaboko has 8 top 14 caps already for Racing 92. Henry Pollock, 14 for Northampton. Not one of the entire Ireland's 31-man squad has a single minute of senior rugby. So there was a gap in
Well,
experience as well as
Ustinov played emerging Ireland tour to count that. Not provincial rugby, but he did play in that, to
yeah,
be fair.
merging Ireland with that. Yeah, I guess I suppose you could count that as senior rugby. Yeah, that would be the one extent, and he went off after 14 minutes. So,
Mhm.
it was going to be tough. With that, I think the probably the emphasis of that was that after England went down to 14 or even 13 men, a 7-man England pack won a scrum penalty against 8-man Ireland after Usmanov went off. So the power just wasn't there, and Ireland got themselves into a lot of good attacking positions, but they just couldn't quite finish it off. It was a good night for a good kicker, and Ben Cohen was that. Taking all of his shots off the tee, where Ireland did leave a couple of points out there. Um, England even just having the advantage of, I think, 12 of their players are former under 20s, only three of Ireland's were. Um, Ireland had two close tries, but they were denied by very strong England defence right on their own line. And even to the point of the last try, which I think was Charlie Maloney, almost went over in the corner. The game was won at that stage. It was 3-19, and it was the last second of the game, and still England hammered them out across that touchline and weren't going to let a single point go. So, it's a testament to that mentality in that team and the overwhelming physicality that they were able to bring. Yeah, it's chasing for Ireland to 19-3 probably isn't quite fair, isn't the right word, because the score is the score. But I think Ireland will feel they could have been good for one or two more. But at the end of the day, it was a night for power and a night for a clinical edge, and England had both of those in a way that Ireland just didn't.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. And like Daniel, that's the thing. Like Ireland, I don't think 16 points was a fair reflection, but it was a pretty decent performance. And like you have to remember, obviously Usnaf goes off early. He's one of their most experienced players. Alan Spicer's one of their more experienced players. He obviously missed the game through injury. They had some big name absentees coming into the tournament as was. Like it's still decent. And like you probably didn't see enough there to say that this is not a good Irish team, but rather a very good English team and a very experienced English team, which means a lot at this level.
Yeah, it was the men versus boys thing. And I think I mean, first of all, I think there's something to be said about the 20-minute red card was my biggest takeaway from the game. I think that's a complete joke when it comes to just taking a guy out of the game. But aside from that, I think if you were looking as an Irish side, the 20s going forward, it's like that's a really bad omen. To be so physically dominated. I think as rugby fans, we've all seen these before. When a side just as we pointed out, anytime Ireland got near the line, it got even tougher because England were able to just totally manhandle them. I think it would just be worrying looking ahead the championship. Italy under 20s, France under 20s are big sides, and Italy will try and do the same thing to you. And if Ireland don't have an answer for that, I can't see how they beat Italy or France. Just like you can't. You, it felt like Irish sides often are maybe a bit smaller, and like we maybe don't always have those sort of big freakish players, but we didn't have a lot of answers for that, and it's something that Irish rugby has gotten a lot better at in recent times is finding how to play, and how to stretch bigger teams. But the 20s on Thursday nights, we looked to kick, and I think we were right to at times, but as well, the English backfield marshaled that pretty well. And once we didn't have that, we started to. I think we looked a bit. Well, what do we do now? So the 20s, they need an answer for dealing with bigger teams. They're not going to be the bigger side, and they're not going to be able to. And I suppose, maybe sort of go toe to toe in a power battle. So you have to find another way. The Italy and France are obviously the sort of, I think they will hope that they would expect to beat Scotland. Um, I think Wales, they probably also hope that they would win there, with that at home. But yeah, the Italy and the France games, if you don't have an answer for the power game, I'm not sure where you go from there.
That's the one concern. But to be fair, David, there was a few players in that pack who stood out. I mentioned Michael Foy already. Now there is reports of him potentially have gotten injured the other night, which would be like along with Ustinov and Spicer already sidelined. That would just be a detrimental blow. But on viewing, who stood out to you on Thursday?
Yeah, that would be that would be a big blow. I hadn't realized that until you said it to us this morning. Because Foy was big, and particularly on a night when we needed players to front up, he did. Facing off against a really muscular English back row, he really showed. I thought Billy Power, the Connacht, I think he's in the back row as well. He put in a couple of really big hits, dislodging balls left and right. I thought Charlie Maloney at full back was pretty good too. Like I said, he almost got down there for the try at the other end. And it's there were one or two players like I think it was those guys really. It's a growing problem that some of the best players in this team are the players who are missing between Ustinov and Spicer. So, yeah, for me it would be Foy, Power, and Maloney were the standouts in that team. Um, I would like to see more of Alir Kareem as well. He came off the bench. He was very good. He almost had to do a dog's work of cleaning up that ball that went loose off the wayward crossfield kick. It would have taken a titanic effort not to get turned over there. Wouldn't be a bad thing to see him maybe get a start and bring some fire. Although with the kind of game he brings, a wet night in Cork was never going to be the night for a player of his talents. But yeah, those would be the big players who stood out for me on probably not a lot of them would like to forget.
Yeah, I was going to mention the centres. I did think Smith and Fahy were equally really, really good, very dominant across the midfield. I would probably be of the opinion, we touched on this in the under 20 preview pod, of moving Fahy to the wing to help Ireland with that width. Because again, not the biggest team in the world, having a power winger there that Wazowski can whip passes out to, I think would help. And then it would allow, O'Leary Kareem, Paddy Farrell, if he gets into the team, Maloney to kind of run off at that. I did think they looked a little bit too one paced on the night. And yes, it was a miserable evening. I do understand that. That was the only drawback I think you'd have about the centres who were pretty good. But we will have lots to talk to about the under 20s. They're back in action on Friday night against Scotland. But I will leave it at that. So my thanks to David, to Harley, and to Daniel for joining me this afternoon. We'll be back on Friday night to preview Ireland's round two showdown with Scotland before a similar recap show coming on Sunday. As ever, if you like what you see here, please do subscribe for what is the busiest 7 weeks of the season. You can find all the links to my channels below, but for now and until next time, take it easy.